In these hours, news is circulating that could once again put to the test the already fragile balance between Rome and the world of tradition. An episode that occurred far from the Vatican palaces, yet it touched one of the most sensitive nerves in the current ecclesiastical climate. What happened is far from obvious and deserves to be fully understood. Stay with us until the end, because the heart of this story may surprise you more than you imagine. In the present time, where every liturgical gesture is scrutinized, measured, and often suspect, there are episodes that, though originating far from the palaces of Rome, end up revealing a profound, almost subterranean tension between the tradition that continues to live among the people of God and a norm that attempts to contain it within increasingly rigid boundaries. This story begins quietly, almost disarmingly, in a Brazilian diocese that rarely makes international headlines. Caruaru, in the state of Pernambuco, a fervent, devout, simple land where ecclesial life flows smoothly and the great controversies of Catholicism seem distant. Yet, as often happens, it is precisely places far from the center that become the scene of events destined to weigh on the global debate. The context is one that everyone knows. Since 2021, with the document Traditionis Custodes, the public celebration of the Missal of 1962 has been subjected to such severe restrictions as to make it, in fact, almost impossible to carry out in the cathedrals of the world. The law establishes that no diocesan bishop can authorize the Mass in the ancient form within his own cathedral without the direct permission of the Holy See, a permission which in practice is systematically denied. The intent is clear: to distance the ancient rite from the symbolic places of liturgical unity, relegating it to marginal, circumscribed, peripheral contexts. The cathedral, the heart of the diocese, thus becomes the place where tradition cannot appear. In this climate, Archbishop Athanasius Schneider's visit to Brazil seemed like any other pastoral appointment. The bishop is known for his outspoken defense of the ancient Roman rite, but his trip wasn't intended to be confrontational. Meetings with the faithful, moments of prayer, the presentation of the Portuguese version of his book, Credo, a visit to the Carmelite nuns, an interview with the journalist Marcelo Andrade. Everything was orderly, everything was clear, everything perfectly in line with a normal episcopal agenda. And even the welcome from the diocesan bishop, José Rui Gonçalves Lopes, 58, seemed to fit into this peaceful framework. A brother who receives another to support a spiritual and cultural path in his own diocese. But according to Gloria TV, during his stay in Brazil, Monsignor Schneider celebrated Mass in the Roman Rite in the Cathedral of Nossa Senhora das Dores, and he did so in the presence of the diocesan bishop. This news carries enormous weight. A celebration in the cathedral, officiated by one of the leading proponents of the ancient rite, with the visible support of the local bishop in a place that Traditionis Custodes considers off-limits, according to the Missal of 1962. And this is where tensions inevitably rise, because if the celebration had truly been that of the ancient rite, the scene depicted in the images would be tantamount to an act that current legislation considers unauthorizable. Not clandestine, not polemical, not shouted, but simply real. A public liturgy in the cathedral under the bishop's gaze, in a context where ecclesiastical law demands that tradition remain invisible. The power of the episode comes not from the outcry, but from the normality with which it appears. No conflict, no alarm, no disciplinary action, just a mass, a cathedral, a celebrating bishop, a bishop present. At a time when Rome is trying to drastically limit the spread of the ancient form, the possibility that it was celebrated in the most symbolic place of the Brazilian diocese becomes an impossible fact to ignore. Because while the Holy See imposes formal prohibitions and requests, while the dicasteries draw boundaries and limitations, while the ancient rite is confined to the peripheries, it appears precisely where it should not appear. At the altar of a cathedral, in the liturgical heart of a diocese, in the place that the law considers untouchable. Not as provocation, but as evidence. Not as conflict, but as continuity. Not as disobedience, but as tradition that simply continues to breathe. Anyone who observes the images immediately understands that the issue isn't unique to Caruaru, nor just the Brazilian trip of a well-known bishop. It touches on a profound issue in the life of the contemporary church. Is it really possible to confine tradition with a decree? Is it really conceivable that a living, beloved rite, rooted in Catholic history, could be relegated to the margins without tensions, resistance, or simply facts that speak to a different truth? The Brazilian case doesn't provide immediate answers, but it poses the question radically. And it does so through the calm power of images, through an event that wasn't heralded as a battle, and instead, despite itself, becomes a sign of liturgical dislocation, a sign Rome cannot ignore for long. Because while documents seek to preserve a balance imposed from above, reality demonstrates that tradition cannot be archived. It manifests itself where it is least expected, resurfaces when it seems suppressed, and finds unexpected support even among bishops presumed to be in line by the law. And so, amid the operational silence of a Brazilian diocese, on a trip that was supposed to be pastoral and discreet, an episode occurred that opens up new scenarios and calls into question the actual effectiveness of restrictions that, on paper, seem absolute. Because as long as the ancient Mass continues to be celebrated, as long as the faithful recognize and seek it, as long as a bishop makes it visible in the most sacred place of his diocese, no legislation will truly be able to convince the Catholic people that tradition is a problem to be contained. And perhaps this is precisely the lesson that comes from Caruaru. Tradition is not a remnant of the past, but a living presence that, when it finds space, illuminates what preserves it. Even when that space is called a cathedral, even when the law says you shouldn't enter there, even when everything seemed arranged to prevent it, tradition lives on and continues to do so in places and at times that no one, at least officially, would have bet on. If you appreciate our outreach and believe this work deserves to continue, please consider leaving us a super thank you. It's a small but crucial gesture that makes every new piece of content possible. Your support is a vital part of this mission. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts. What do you think? If you liked the video, comment, Amen. God bless you.